All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's workshop on integrity in climate finance. And with me, we have Dr. Sanjeev. So I'm going to be reading Dr. Sanjeev's bio and then we'll get started. All right. Okay. Dr. Sanjeev is a criminologist with more than 20 years of working experience in the field of investigating and development of corruption prevention strategies. He conducted high-level investigations involving multinationals which were ultimately sanctioned. He joined the African Development Bank as a senior investigator. He is currently the Integrity and Compliance Manager at the Green Climate Fund, leading the prevention unit on the development of integrity policies, prevention strategies, due diligence, and conduct of integrity risk assessment, including anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism risk. Dr. Narayan holds a doctorate in criminology, criminal justice from University of Portsmouth, and LLM in ICT law from the University of Strathfield, a MSc in disaster risk management and climate governance, and a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering. He is also a certified fraud examiner and a certified anti-money laundering specialist. Please welcome to today's Climate Finance Academy, Dr. Sanjeev Narayan. Dr. Sanjeev, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and Jen, for making this happen. So thank you for the introduction. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whichever part of the world you are from. So I'm currently based in South Korea. So the time here is 11 p.m. So I am the Integrity and Compliance Manager of the Independent Integrity Unit of the Green Climate Fund. So Green Climate Fund, the headquarters is based in South Korea. So I'm going to make a presentation on the nexus between integrity and climate change. It's a very important connection, and it's important for different stakeholders, for all those involved, activists, climate activists, to understand the implication of integrity violation in climate action. So that's why it's important, given your background, youth activists, it's important for you to get a glimpse of what is integrity, first of all. It is something that is not widely talked about because for various reasons, politicians don't want to talk about, integrity, etc. And it's very important, but it's very important issue to understand how, as activists, you can help to ensure integrity in any climate finance project, and also to understand how integrity concern can have a negative impact on climate action. So essentially, my presentation today will walk you through what is integrity, what it is all about, and how, as a youth activist, in your campaigning, you have to understand integrity and how you can really advocate for integrity in climate action, whether in your dealing with different stakeholders, with public official, with international organization. It's you have, as a youth activist, you have a voice, and it's important that your voice be heard. So you, as a climate activist, you know already about the technicality of climate change. Climate change is real, and climate change is happening. So we have a lot of issues, storm, hurricane, drought, flooding happening. This has always been happening, in every part of the world. But what is specific about climate change is that it is happening with intensity and frequency, which is really taken everyone by surprise, and the devastating effects that it has on the environment and also on we human beings. Not to mention also, the ecosystem where you have different living entity also are directly affected. So it is a phenomenon that is happening, and it is essential that we understand the urgency of action. There's an urgency of action because of climate change, and humanity need action. We need urgent action, and this is where there is what we call climate finance. Climate finance needs to flow to address certain situation, to make our life comfortable. This is what we call climate mitigation program or climate adaptation program. So these program or project need financing. They need an inflow of climate finance to make it happen, so that to protect vulnerable communities, in developing countries and least developed countries, so that climate finance can flow to priority project and address these concerns, so that communities are not affected. So climate change. So climate change has not happened overnight. It is a continuous process, and you will know, I will not go into the detail of it, into the technicalities of it, but climate change is all about, greenhouse effect. And when we talk about greenhouse effect, it's about carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen oxide, etc. So data gathered over a period of time, as you see in the graph, clearly illustrate that there is. Can you hear me? Is it okay, John?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, so we clearly see there is an upward trend, and the percentage concentration of these carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases is having a serious impact on our atmosphere, and this is creating the imbalance, and this imbalance is creating a weather changes. Where in certain region we have drought, and which is coming with intensity and frequency, which is people has not expected it to happen. And the latest one is Hurricane Helen, which is happening in North Carolina. And I was watching BBC yesterday. So many people are found dead, and these are creating a lot of concern, because these climate consequences impacting humanity. So that's why we say there's an urgency of action, and you will see in COP that is coming up soon. So the topic of discussion is how to facilitate climate finance, so that eligible countries, eligible communities can benefit from climate finance to implement a project on the ground. So according to research, actually there are a gap of 4 trillion annually that is needed for climate investment till 2030 in order for us to meet the Paris Agreement. So in this graph, you will see the mean surface temperature. There's clear evidence through scientific research that the mean surface temperature of the globe is, the temperature is increasing, and this have a direct effect that we are, witnessing daily in our life. So this leads us to this question. So I send this question to you. So what, according to you, is the fastest warming continent? Africa? You have 3 options: Africa, Europe, or Latin America. Please write your answer in the chat, please. So I can't see the chat. If you can just
Yeah, we have a
Let
lot
me.
of people answering Africa and Latin America mainly.
Oh, really? So
Some
it's
people
really
also mentioning Europe.
okay, okay. It's really surprising because the fastest warming continent is Europe.
Wow.
Hmm. Yes.
Everyone's shocked in the chat.
Yeah. So this leads us, I was saying in at the beginning, so we have mitigation. We have mitigation. What is mitigation? Mitigation, you know it already, is all about minimizing, reducing, the emission of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, like, when we are producing electricity through, coal or, heavy fuel. So by minimizing these release of these gases in the atmosphere, so actually there are new technique which is yet to be developed fully, like channeling that emission into carbon sink into the soil, so that to minimize catastrophic effect of on our atmosphere. This is all about mitigation, and in certain countries we can finance project in mitigation areas, like providing ecosystem, like vehicle which is release least carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, so as to control the release of carbon emission. But also we have adaptation. Adaptation is all about, due to the changing weather conditions, certain countries, for example, they are flooding, and we have to adjust and build infrastructure so as to accommodate the existing community, so that the existing community can evolve. Like, we have a lot of projects in different developing countries, like Bangladesh, for example, where there are a lot of flooding has happened, and they need to have proper infrastructure so that people can be evacuated and go into safe place during flooding. So adaptation is more about adapting to the changing climate condition. So there are basically two type of project in addressing climate change: mitigation and adaptation. But also there are certain project which is in between mitigation and adaptation. So you know it already, international, there are different international climate agreement. You have the Paris Agreement, which was adopted in 2015 and which is a landmark international treaty which aim to limit the global warming and facilitate adaptation to climate change. And in fact, the Green Climate Fund, is the financial arm of the Paris Agreement. So, after the Paris Agreement was adopted, so GCF was created with the objective of facilitating the transfer of climate finance to project, so that to minimize, to facilitate adaptation to climate change. You have the UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It provides the foundation for the global cooperation on climate action. And UNFCCC, this is where we have every year COP, which is the Conference of Parties. All countries' representatives come together and see where we are in the progress in the fight against climate change and what can be done at national level, at regional level, and at international level. You have the IPCC also, which is a working group, which is the International Panel on Climate Change, which offers scientific assessment to inform the international climate policy discussion and decision. So it provides a report, very frequent report on the status of the world climate, what is happening, like the surface temperature is very scientific, and we provide evidence of climate change impact and consequence that we are facing, to urge action for more forceful action to for climate finance to fight climate change. So it's very important to understand what is integrity in climate finance. What is integrity? Some of the aspect of integrity is all about, honesty, transparency of decision making. So when we are talking about integrity, it's integrity throughout the life cycle of climate action. It is not necessarily when the project is implemented. It starts at the very beginning when there's a government takes a commitment and takes a decision to implement policies, climate-related policies, and how to address climate action at the national level. So integrity starts at the very beginning when the politicians, the government of the day decide to implement project, what action, what's the roadmap to address climate change. And it goes throughout the project life cycle from the implementation of the project, the fund is being disbursed, and how it is being contracted, how goods and services for implementing of the project is being contracted till the project is completed. So all these process, we have to ensure integrity of the process. When we say integrity, it means that we have to achieve what we have initially earmarked, what's the goal initially earmarked for the project, so that the project fund is not diverted for malpractices. Very often in development project, we see that because of corruption, because of malpractices, because of politician involvement, money are diverted for other beneficial, or even priority change, and because the government of the day deem it more appropriate to favor certain project at the expense of climate-related project. So there may be a dishonesty in the process. So that's why we say integrity should be embedded in the process since the very beginning. So what according to you can we refer to integrity? What according to you, what resonate within you about integrity? When we talk about integrity, what resonate about integrity? So if you can put some words in the chat, that will be helpful. So if you can help me to see what are the new.
Okay.
If there are any response. What may be the
Principles,
definition? Yeah.
Okay, someone said accountability, transparency, honesty, and transparency. Transparency
Yes.
and monitoring of financial flows. Most people are saying transparency. Transparency.
Yeah. Part of the integrity process, it's a wider term depending on the interpretation and also on, different culture. What's the different cultural? There's a cultural difference that in, people in Africa, people in different continents, different countries can have different perception what is integrity. But I see one important reference you mentioned about monitoring. Monitoring also, good monitoring process by an oversight body that report regularly on what is happening on the ground. That can be a good definition of ensuring integrity in the process. So as integrity means different thing. It has a wide scope, from honesty, transparency, accountability. So, the process, decision making be public, decision like the procurement process be public, be advertised, and also, contractors that are awarded contract be advertised in the public domain so that there's better public scrutiny. And also there are institutions that are involved, and also there should be good whistleblowing mechanism in place. It's very important that there's a good whistleblowing mechanism. That is, if there's anything that is happening, that is against the community, that, favoring and fairness in the process, it's be communicated, it's be channeled to the appropriate authority for an investigation to be initiated. And it's important, investigation should be part of the, fairness process, and it should give people trust. People should trust the system, and it should be open to, anyone who has a hint that something fishy has been happening. The politician is favoring certain people, certain contractors, the money is being diverted, or, the land that was initially earmarked for the development of the project has been changed in the middle of the project. It has happened. We have seen it in the past, in certain countries, where because of political implication, the project has shifted from one project side to another project side just to favor one politician. So we see there's a lot of possibilities of malpractices, integrity concerns that can go along the way. And it's important that there is a mechanism in place to address this concern, and a reliable, source where, it can be investigated and action can be taken. Because, GCF, for instance, the Green Climate Fund, we are a donor organization. We give money, we give finance for climate-related projects to countries, to different entities. And it is our responsibility to ensure that the fund is used for its intended purpose. It is our responsibility and because we are prioritizing, the funding. So we can't, because of the urgency of climate action, these funds cannot be, diverted for other goals. It's important that there is a proper system in place at the level, at the national level, and any malpractices be addressed with the right process. So corruption has a negative impact on climate change action. And what happens normally is, when there's corruption in a climate project, for instance, and people know there's a corruption at the national level, it's taken up by the media, and, it causes a reputational risk to the donor organization, to the entity implementing the project, but it causes a lack of trust within the community. And this lack of trust can diminish, the collaborative effort in addressing climate change, because we have a target by 2030 to meet the Paris Agreement. There's a limit to the rising temperature, 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we have to work together and to ensure we have a race against time to ensure that we address it appropriately. So this erosion of trust can seriously have an impact, in implementing climate-related projects. And there's misallocation of resources. So corruption leads to inefficient allocation of resources, impacting climate change mitigation effort, including adaptation effort also. So we will not be giving, where there are urgent projects elsewhere. If the resources are being diverted, then we are restricting certain community in implementing, urgent projects that are related to climate change. And there are many, direct impact of corruption on climate action. There's a delay of action. So if there's a corruption, so this can, there can be initiatives, there can be an investigation, and there can be action by stopping the funding. And this can have a severe impact in the project. And delay in action, the consequence of it. As there can be different consequences on the health issues of people, the level of carbon dioxide for countries to meet their, national, limit, carbon emission limit. And there's also, a threat to human being, to the community. So there's a lot of implication of corruption. Are there more, according to you, what are some impact of corruption on climate action based on your experience, if any? An example, please.
Okay, someone said poor reporting.
Poor reporting, yeah.
I remember
Okay.
there was a
Greater
scandal the
disasters
other.
impact.
Oh, sorry. There was a scandal the other
Okay,
year
someone
about an
said,
ice cream shop in Thailand. I think
oh,
that was financed and tagged as climate finance.
Yes, there's a lot of implication on, about, and it has also can have an impact on the ecosystem. When you're delaying the action of climate action, it can cause extinction of a species. It can cause imbalance in the ecosystem. It can cause, disease. Creation of disease. So a lot of implication because of the delay, corruption, delaying climate action, and causing, death of, species, including human being. Do you have more example of, how corruption can cause climate?
yes, let me read them out.
Yeah.
Someone said carbon capture is seen as greenwashing. Someone said
Yes.
disappointed and unmotivated population, faulty carbon credit claims, ineffective carbon credit claims. Let me scroll up. Give me a moment. Sorry, someone said weak stakeholder cooperation, maladaptation,
Exactly.
undermine credibility, fall of ESG. Okay, is that fine?
Yeah, that's very good. I think they nail it. So there's a lot of opportunities. Sorry, I'm not saying opportunity, but a lot of negative impact in climate action. Greenwashing is all about, fraudulently claiming that it is use, certain action is for climate, related incentive when it is not, just to get the benefit of, a climate incentive project by the government. But there's a lot of undermining, lack of trust, undermining action. This has an impact, and degradation of the environment, which is also, instead of, creating situation to address, climate change, to have a better living, is creating more problem for the community, and also degrading the environment through landsliding, wildfire, drought, flooding, which goes beyond our capacity to manage them. And also there is that issue of maladaptation. Maladaptation, what is maladaptation? Maladaptation is, when we are financing adaptation project, instead of us adapting to the change in climate condition, it is creating the contrary. For example, we have a case in Bangladesh where there was flooding, and there was an adaptation project to build up a sort of a shelter for the community so that they can transfer to the shelter during the flooding season. But what happened, because of politician has influenced the process, so the shelter has been built in a remote area, very remote to where the communities was living. So during flooding season, it was no way possible for the community to shift to the shelter. So money injected in the shelter was of no use. This is the phenomenon that we refer to maladaptation. Instead of adapting to the climate change, it is creating maladaptation, because not only the people cannot adapt to the change, but it is creating more problem for them. because the fund has not been used for its intended purpose. The project has been implemented, but in a remote area which is not initially identified as a flood zone area because of political commitment. And in this climate model, so when we are talking about corruption, it's important to understand that there's a lot of country involvement. So it's the countries that take the decision, that give the priority to what projects they will implement. And this is under the Paris Agreement also. We delegate the authority at the national level to identify project of priority. So given this political involvement, and also when we are talking about climate action, it is urgency of action. We have to act urgently. And urgency of action, political involvement, and also the technicalities involved in this type of project, because it's highly technical, so make it vulnerable to corruption. These are the ingredients that make it vulnerable to corruption. And that's why we say climate finance projects are more vulnerable to corruption. So that's why we need to be vigilant, and there should be multi-stakeholder approach, engagement. We need to engage with different stakeholders to ensure climate governance, because climate action is not only the responsibility of the politician, but it's everyone's responsibilities. The community, the vulnerable group, youth, different stakeholders, civil society organization, and different institutions, the private, the public sector. So this is what we call collective action. There should be collective action to ensure climate governance. So as I mentioned, the key actors in climate governance are government entities. We have the Ministry of Environment. You have different parastatal bodies set up and that look at climate aspect, that look at climate project implementation. You have climate finance institutions that help to investment in climate sector. You have NGOs, civil society organizations, that should be one of the important stakeholders in advocating for that the project is implemented correctly, effectively, and efficiently, and to bring awareness campaign, to do research at the grassroots level. And we have also the private sector. So what are the challenges and obstacles in ensuring good climate governance? So we've seen that there's a lot of, constraint in ensuring that, fund are used for its intended purpose and used effectively, because the risk of red tapes, what we call red tape, is the opportunity for malpractices, corruption, and fairness to occur is high because of political resistance. Because the politician, the government of the day, want to have the responsibility of managing the fund, the money, the project, by because they have a vested interest, for example, in allocating it to the contractors of their choice, and but unfortunately the project is not implemented of good quality standard. So there's a lot of political resistance. And also, in some countries, when election is coming, so politicians use it as something to gain vote. So this is something also which can be some of the challenges. But also there's lobbying by certain group to ensure certain projects are implemented, favoring certain community at the expense of others, without due regard to urgency of action. So there's a lot of challenges, obstacle, if you want, in implementing climate action. So economic constraint, they don't have the fund, they don't have the money just in time, and because of the urgency of action, there's a lot of possibilities that can provide resistance to implement the project effectively. But one very important aspect is awareness. It's important to bring awareness, to bring knowledge to all stakeholders in the society and to involve everyone in the society from the very beginning so that they are fully aware that climate action need each and everyone participation. You can make the difference. Everyone can make the difference. So it's important to bring awareness, to advocate that climate action so that you can push for implementing climate action, and also ensure integrity that you can be used as a checks and balances in the process to ensure that everything is done in the right manner, so that there's no opacity in the process, so that there's good oversight. There should be good oversight and monitoring to ensure that the projects are implemented and they are on track. So we mentioned about the challenges of maintaining integrity. There's a risk of greenwashing. People with projects are marked as environmentally friendly without delivering substantial benefit. So it is a fraud. In fact, greenwashing is a fraud, and it is happening. We have seen it in many companies. The claims that they are delivering substantial benefit, but when in fact they are not doing so, just to gain certain benefits, certain incentive that being offered to companies involved in sustainable development. And also the challenges is about regulation, not having proper regulation, no proper rule, no proper policy to address climate change challenges, climate change action. Some countries has come up with climate change laws, and so as to facilitate the implementation, the disbursement, etc. But we still have a long way to go. And how to achieve it is by making your voice heard, so that the authority knows that we mean business and they can be taken to task and be expedite the process of implementing appropriate climate change regulation to facilitate the process. So we've seen that I talk about the importance of climate change. Climate change is happening, and fighting climate change should go hand in hand with fighting corruption. And like other development projects, as I mentioned, the vulnerability of climate action project is high. So it's very important that as a stakeholder, as a youth activist, you are very much aware of the impact that corruption can have on project. And it's very important to take them to task and to ensure there's advocacy, there's awareness that is put in place to so that everything is on track and the money is used for its intended purpose, for the benefit of the community, the country at large, and also ultimately to meet the Paris Agreement. So there's a lot of works that need to be done in that space, and like strengthening the institution, good governance institution, where there's less corruption. We have good oversight. Good oversight is very important because it's used as a checks and balances, like to ensure that everything is done correctly. It enhances the oversight mechanism, but also there should be collective action. There should be global collaboration and exchange of knowledge, exchange of information between different groups, so that we can collectively come together and advocate for integrity, for transparency, to ensure to ensure that government are implementing the project according to the plan. And for example, we have different platforms. We have COP, for example, is a good opportunity for youth activists to voice out their concern regarding integrity. And this is a good platform because we have all stakeholders, we have government, we have financing institution, we have donors, and it's good to hear your different voices coming from different stakeholders group. And GCF, the department from which I am, the Independent Integrity Unit, we used to participate in COP every year so that at least people are aware, people attending COP, they are aware that it's important. It's not about, receiving the money to implement GCF project and to speed up the process, but it's also to ensure that the money, there's integrity in the process. Integrity is embedded in the whole process. So there's a lot of actions that need to be done, and this is an area where we have to be innovative. We have to look, and this is why we are pitching in together with youth as one of our stakeholders to work together with you to see. There's a lot of innovative ideas that can come up, how we can work together to with not only with donor institution, but different national organizations, civil society organization. We can come up with a platform so that we can jointly advocate for integrity, for anti-corruption measures, anti-corruption strategies to ensure that the money is received for its intended purpose. So there are certain best practices in ensuring integrity in climate finance. We have to ensure due diligence, good audit system, independent audit, and also the audit institution should be operating efficiently. There's a lot of, best practices. Some countries has worked very well. We have countries like Rwanda, for example. They have set up a working group during the project implementation stage, where in the working group, you have a public official, civil society organization, and you have youth that have pitched in, and they meet very often to take stock of how the project on the ground is going and to provide any feedback that what are the negative, things that may have not been working well. And these, they take it on board and it is discussed in a meeting and they take appropriate action. The authority take appropriate action and measures to ensure that the vulnerabilities are addressed promptly and to ensure that the project is on track. So these are some of these, mechanisms that has been working very well. And in different countries, we have various examples of good practices. And this is where there's a call for action from different stakeholder groups to come up with your innovative ideas of how you can bring, more awareness, advocating for integrity among different, strata of the society. It can be with, college student. It can be with different group, advocating through billboard, through there's different possibilities. And you have social media now. You can disseminate what is going on the project, disseminate what is so that people are held responsible. People, institutions are held responsible and accountable for the project. So I will be happy to, that as I mentioned, there's a lot of case studies of successful integrity project, like in the energy sector, where we have achieved, with good practices in place, good system and processes, the project has been successful. It's not only about the bad things that has happened, but this can be used as lesson learned. And this is also something that we strongly advocate. It's not only to bring awareness of the negative impact of corruption, but to share with people, to share with different stakeholders what has been done with good practices and the consequence that good practices have on the project. So we have cases where community-based adaptation initiative has been initiated with local engagement of different communities, and this has worked wonderfully well, and with different, stakeholders group. So we talked about it already. Consequences of a lack of integrity is undermining credibility, wasted resources, negative impact on the environment. These are some of the consequences of lack of integrity. There are many. So the conclusion for this presentation is the urgency for action for implementing climate projects, but also to ensure that integrity goes hand in hand. We have to work together. There's no direct solution to it, but depending on the case, depending on the countries, depending on the culture, so we have to be innovative and to address it in the right manner, and collective effort, we can meet the challenge. And also, the key takeaways, one of the key takeaways is there should be continuous. So once we implement a system in a project, we ensure that it's being done with transparency. We have to continuously monitor and ensure that not only the project, but the whole mechanism, the institution, the people, the mindset are properly addressing the situation. So addressing climate change goes hand in hand with, ensuring that we have a proper system. So we rely on youth as our main stakeholder to ensure that you make your voice heard about the concern that integrity can have on climate action. So this brings to the end of my first part of the presentation. So I will be happy to take any question or clarifications that you may have. And so you have 5-10 minutes. So you can, I don't know, if you will take, we can have them speak out or on chat. Any question?
We'll take both. Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjeev, for this amazing session. I actually learned a lot. So we're going to be starting off with questions now. So if you have any question, you can signify by raising your hand so that I would call your name and then you will mute yourself and then you'll ask your questions. So while we are doing that, we have some questions in the chat box. So I'm going to be reading them out to you and then Dr. Sanjeev, you would respond to them. So the very first one is from Anup. Is saying, how can integrity be differentiated from the UNFCCC Enhanced Transparency Framework as mentioned in the PA Article 13, that's Paris Agreement Article 13? Did you get that?
Yes. Yeah, so, integrity is from part of the UNFCCC. We have a target, Paris Agreement. We have a target, and each country, NDC, National Determined Contribution, they have their roadmap, their plan to meet the Paris Agreement. And to meet the Paris Agreement, you have an urgency of action. You have a priority of implementing the project. So if you don't have a good institution, you lack good governance. So implementing the project will impede the process. It will delay the project if you don't have good checks and balances in the system, and your system is prone to corruption, malpractices. So this will have an indirectly impact, implementation of the project. And this will definitely delay implementation and consequently our target for Paris Agreement. But also you have the donors institution. The donors, as the donors, we will ensure that the fund is being used for its intended purpose. So if we don't get the assurance that the project will be used for its intended purpose, so we will not be ready to release the funding. So we will release funding unless, the entity give us the assurance that they are able to manage the project properly, they are able to take into action any malpractices and act upon it. So that's why it's important. Integrity, is very, very important. It is directly linked to the UNFCCC, which call for action on to meet the Paris Agreement. So this is why we are saying that integrity has to be addressed. And once you address integrity, then it also can facilitate climate finance. There's need for urgent action, and we give us the assurance, us donor organization, to speed up the process for climate finance to implement project. I hope it answered your question.
Yes, that's perfect. Okay, we have another question from Stephanie. Person is saying, do you have any tips on how to bring up issues of climate governance when we are discussing with politicians to reduce the political resistance?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Climate governance is an evolving concept. Climate governance is all about involving all stakeholders who has a say in the decision-making process. So we strongly advocate for climate governance. So this is where, it becomes tricky. It becomes tricky in the sense that different country level, different community, they have different, way of doing things. And this is where, if you have a strong voice, you know your rights, you know what is wrong, what is correct, what is transparency, what is integrity. You can ask for more transparency. You can advocate, you can hear your voice and be part of the decision-making process. So this is where we advocate for different groups, like, women, like, youth, to be represented as part of the community and in every, decision-making process. So this is where, we don't have the direct solution for it because it will depend on a case-to-case basis. So we strongly advocate that, as a youth activist, you make your voice heard so that you can form part of the decision-making process and influence the decision-making process so that, you have a say in the whole process. The next question.
All right, thank you. We'll take one more question here, and then we'll now take people that are raising their hands. So, Kristen, Herbert is saying, what are the punishments for persons who breach such agreements? In parts of my region, these things are not prosecuted heavily. Is it more so a blacklisting of the individual?
Yeah, this is an interesting aspect to it. When we talk about a certain malpractices, there should be a restriction. Restriction in the sense, that's why I was talking about whistleblowing. So when you blow the whistle, there should be a process where, the complaint is channeled, and there should be a reliable, investigation body that investigate, and if there is it's substantiated, there should be action. And it's very important that there is action and there's sanction. And for example, what we do as GCF, Green Climate Fund, we have an investigation unit. So if we disburse, for instance, a project on the ground, for example, in a country, and we rely on the country, on the organization to handle the complaint and to conduct the investigation. So, but if the organization doesn't have the capacity to conduct the investigation, then GCF take up the investigation. We can help you with the investigation. We do the investigation, our unit do the investigation. And if it is substantiated, then we will take action. What is the action? The action is there will be prosecution, the individual, and if it deem appropriate, then we can also stop the funding. stop the funding until appropriate setup are put in place to address certain loophole. So we have institutions like the World Bank, other institution that has taken action, that has investigated and sanctioned the project, so that and sanction is one of the ways that can provide a deterrence for other organization, at the national level to engage into malpractices. So it's important that there's a proper mechanism in place, investigation and sanction, and ultimately it's the consequence of engaging into malpractices.
All right, then. Thank you. Perfect. So we're going to be taking questions from people that have their hands raised. Let me see if I can see them. Sorry, Jen, can you see them? I can't see them.
Hello, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, go ahead, please.
My name is Salma Hamis Al-Harthi from Oman. I wanted to ask, usually, in some cases, the people who we are supposed to report to, especially now we have seen how corruption can be and what causes it and the effects of it. So the people who we are supposed to report to, sometimes they be the most corrupt people that a person could ever know. And in a lot of countries we see, in a lot of places, people tend to compromise their peace just to work on that. So is there any efficient way where people can deal with these leaders or these people who are corrupt and are not supposed to be, rather than them compromising their peace and creating chaos?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. And I think it's a very interesting question in the sense that, certain countries lack appropriate governance structure. It is really unfortunate, and certain developing countries are still lacking behind, and there's still a lot of progress that need to be made, in ensuring that the institution are robust and properly address, do their work properly, and they are not at the mercy of politicians or corrupt leaders. So as part of a donor organization like GCF, so our mission is not only to ensure that we address climate change by, ensuring financing of climate action, but as part of the process, it is also our mandate to ensure that we build up capacity. It's important to build up capacity. So that's why I'm saying, as part of the process, it's important for countries, for certain region which lacks that capacity, we have, and this is what we are doing actually, building the capacity, the governance capacity to address certain, shortcoming, to address corruption, to address malpractices, to address integrity concern, so that they strengthen their institutions, strengthen their organization, and they abide to what we call fiduciary standard. We have a fiduciary standard, and this is part of the support that we are providing to these countries by, through readiness grant. I don't know how far you know it. There's certain readiness grants that provide certain structure, governance structure at the national level. And we have to reinforce that, and so that to strengthen it. In certain countries, in certain regions, we have still a long way to go, but it's not impossible. We are here to work collectively together to ensure that while implementing climate project, we also build up the governance structure.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can the next person unmute and ask their questions, please?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jumoke from Nigeria. Mine is not a question, just to add to today's lecture, and I must say it's been an interactive and an insightful section. So just to add to that, my organization has an alternate observer status with the GCF. So we have an activity as an organization where we do Gender Accountability Forum. That's a Gender and Accountability Forum where we, through the gender lens, we engage GCF approved projects that are being implemented in African countries. Yeah, there's a focus on African countries. So we engage them to ask questions and then see how projects are being implemented, if they are actually reaching the people that it is meant to reach, if local women on the ground are benefiting from the projects that are being implemented in each of these countries. So we've been doing that. I think we started 2 years ago, and I would say we've actually engaged 3 accredited entities from the GCF, and we've been monitoring that, and we've been following up on how accountable all of these accredited entities, how they've been. And the major objective of this Gender and Accountability Forum is actually aimed at mobilizing African and especially Nigerian women to engage in the with the implementation of GCF-funded projects in Nigeria and Africa at large. So we mobilize these women towards accountability to gender equality and women's empowerment. So we also interrogate how GCF project level gender action plans has been, and then how it's been implemented with the involvement of local women and civil society organizations. So we also share valuable lessons learned in the process of implementing project level gender action plans in Nigeria and Africa at large. So I'm only saying this to resonate with what we've learned today. And on our own part, we've been doing that, and we hope to continue doing that on GCF approved projects. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your testimony. And in fact, this is a very tangible evidence that, what we are doing. So what I mentioned earlier, I think to the question of Salma, so this is precisely what I was talking about. So we have different, objectives. It's not only about climate finance, pushing the finance to the project, but it's also to ensure that they are appropriate watchdog, that they are different group. Gender is a concrete example where we have that, platform where they work together with GCF to ensure that, the voice of women are heard, and to ensure that the GCF project that we are implementing on the ground, that they take into consideration women, gender issues happening there on the ground. And these, what Jumoke mentioned is precisely a feedback. They provide the ears and eyes to GCF. And it is us as a donor organization to identify any shortcoming, what is happening on our project, and to take remedial action so that we address it correctly to safeguard the interests of women, vulnerable people on the ground. So like this, we have also for indigenous people. So we have a group where indigenous people in certain countries, they are directly impacted by project. And like this, we have different stakeholders. And that's why I was advocating for maybe a group of youth activists so that we can develop integrity initiative together and see how projects are implemented with due consideration to the community. So up to you, Issohe,
Yes,
to manage the time. So I see we are 12 past.
Okay,
yes,
yes, sorry.
I have a
Sanjay, can we
question.
take one more person? Yes,
Can I ask it?
please hold on. Can you hold on, please?
Yes, hello.
All right,
This is
Sanjay,
Shaliar from Bangladesh. I have a question to Mr. Sanjeev. And Mr. Sanjeev, thank you so much for your presentation. You mentioned about maladaptation and gave an example about building disaster shelters far away from the community. My question would be, isn't it a technical design problem that failed to capture the actual need, which could have been avoided by raising flag earlier? And as we are talking about GCF, my additional question is how GCF Technical Board is involved in this process to differentiate maladaptation and design problems and how they resolve such scenarios. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much for the question. So without going into the detail of the project, so there have been multiple projects. So maladaptation can occur at any phase of that any project. It's not only about it can happen because of technical issues, because it has been technical. It has not gone according to the technical design. Definitely, this is a possibility. But normally, the technical issues are dealt by the operation side of GCF. So we have a team which is responsible for oversight of implementation of project. And these people ensure that, the project that was initially approved is going according to the plan. So definitely there are checks and balances, and this is something that is taken on seriously. If it is distorted just to suit certain need and certain benefit, then definitely it's not an appropriate process, and it has to be dealt accordingly with the right mechanism in place. If it is it involves malpractices, it can be it involve malpractices, corruption, but it depends on the case. So it has to be investigated, and the operation side engineers has to really delve in depth to really identify the source of the issue.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, great. Dr. Sanjeev, we'll be taking the 5-minute break, then we'll go into the case study, then breakout rooms. Is that fine?
Yes, that's work for me. So 5 minutes, and we meet in 5 minutes, and then I will walk you through the case study.
All right. So we're going to be taking the 5-minute break, everyone. Then we'll come back here, reconvene, and then go through the case study. So for the case study, Dr. Sanjeev is going to be walking us through what we're going to do. And we're going to be entering a group of, okay, since we're 68 on the call, maybe a group of 6. So we'll do a group of 6, and then, yeah, that'll be it.